So much of one's relationship with God informs their identity and how they view others, just like how so much of one's job can inform their identity and how they view others. I started thinking about this after seeing Telfar release their Fear of Job t shirts, which is referencing Jerry Lorenzo's Fear of God line. And it had me thinking, like, all right, it's not that deep. Some people were speculating, like, maybe Telfar was mocking Jerry Lorenzo's brand. Apparently, that got cleared up by Jerry Lorenzo via screenshot of some DMs when someone asked him how he felt about it. But, we can go ahead and just cop out and say it's not that deep, but let's have a little fun here. Fear of God, fear of job. I, after laughing, started thinking about how these two concepts kind of address ambiguity. There's spiritual ambiguity and then there's material ambiguity. Don't want to make assumptions here. When I say spiritual ambiguity, I'm talking about the fear of God. And when I talk about material ambiguity, I'm talking about the fear of job and how our identities help us navigate such ambiguity. Now, I'm going to talk about the identity of the brands and then we'll bring it back to like the interpersonal stuff. So when I think about the identity of the Telfar brand, from my viewing, it seems like Telfar Clemens, his ethos is in the brand. They're having a bunch of fun, right? It's a bit more whimsical. The guy's a serious designer, right? So it's it's humorous, but it's aware. Like he's designing for Libya in the Olympics. He's designing for them, but also, redefining luxury, making it a bit more accessible, but definitely fun. It's not taking itself too serious. Definitely reminds me of this quote that life is too important to take seriously. So Telfar captures that. Really appreciate that approach. On the other hand, you got Fear of God, a bit more now aligned with this traditional sense of luxury. Started out a bit more grungy, then it evolved, and now it's become, like Italian tailoring. Jerry Lorenzo, brilliant designer, also designs with athletics, like partnering with the NBA in his line. So Jerry and Telfar kind of exist, kind of, if you think about it like that, in a similar space. And I think that is how these brands, and that's the cool thing about fashion, is like when you associate with a brand, you kind of associate with the ethos or philosophy, a story that you identify with. And I think that's the cool thing about these brands. Now, if we get into this fear of job, fear of God, spiritual ambiguity, material ambiguity, life is ambiguous. There's a lot of chaos in life. And so we kind of tap into our identities. And via our identities, we attach ourselves to other things. So be it faith and be it job or be it family or whatever values you may have. But you'll find that these parameters create a framework that kind of instill a sense of control or maybe even order within all the ambiguity, all the chaos that life is. Okay. And that's cool, you know, because the identity, the values, these things feed into each other. So when Jerry Lorenzo was asked about how he felt about the Fear of Job shirts, apparently there was a screenshot DM saying that him and Telfar shared this extreme fear of not wanting to work for anybody else, or they just had a strong desire not to work for anybody else. So this idea of not wanting to work for anybody else, and then if we think about the current labor market, all the chaos that's going on in the economy at large, especially when we're thinking about how AI impacts things, how that impacts the labor market, how that impacts jobs, then, not saying to be fearful, but it is kind of, you know, fun to laugh at in the face of all of this because nobody really knows for sure. A lot of projections are being made. Nobody really knows for sure. And, you know, you can't even find comfort in the data for real. Once you get there is once you get there. So ultimately, I'm bringing all this up because identity does create a framework for us to have some order within the chaos of life, for us to navigate with a bit more groundedness, centeredness, a bit more control. Interestingly enough, ambiguity through these stories and through identity, ambiguity is not being eliminated, but is being transformed. And with that, our identities are kind of at this intersection of something we discover, something we build, and the things we buy. So if you found this interesting, go ahead and subscribe, like, leave comments. This is the Hall Street Index. My name is D Hall. I'll catch you next time.